So Anand, what is this? Chapter 14, chapter 15 in our ongoing conversation about
Volume three.
will. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Will the institutions hold? We go back and forth, and I think we both agree that we were right on some points, we were wrong on some points. When I was saying calmly that the institutions would hold, and you had doubts about it. I will say I'll be the first to admit I was getting very impatient with Merrick Garland, and asked on this show a couple of weeks ago whether he was asleep at the switch, because here we have a president who clearly, in my opinion at least, and I've read the statute enough and seen other people charged under the statute to understand that he committed crimes on January the 6th, and was wondering if the Justice Department was too afraid of their shadow to actually prove to all of us that no man or woman is above the law. So we're moving forward, and perhaps no person is above the law. So I still stand by my original belief that America's institutions are strong enough to hold. I'm curious where you are this morning.
Yeah, well, I do enjoy our long-running discussion of this going back to 2015. I think right now we are witnessing an epic showdown between the rule of law and the kind of law of power. I think if you're my age, I mean, it's not just Donald Trump. If you're my age, you have not actually seen real accountability in American life for a whole bunch of things. You didn't see it for Iraq. You didn't see it for 2008. You didn't see it for Katrina. You didn't really see it for kind of falling on our face on COVID. So I think this is in many ways an age of impunity that goes far beyond Donald Trump. Powerful people, wealthy people have been able to evade what ensnares the rest of us. And so now, yes, Merrick Garland seems to have woken up, or at least shared a little bit more of what was going on behind the scenes. We know that rule of law based thing is actually advancing, has some teeth and courage behind it. But I would say for now, the law in this country has been that people like Donald Trump will ultimately get away with it. That has been the norm over the last generation. And I think the fundamental concern I still have is, do the people on the rule of law side understand the fight they are in? Or are they still playing by Marquis of Queensberry rules? And they have to in many ways. That's what the rule of law is. This is the paradox here. The rule of law is plodding. It is slow. It is careful. It is not jazz hands. It is, sober to a fault. But when you are dealing with not a politician who may have committed some crimes by accident, but a kind of mob leader, fascist, autocrat wannabe whose criminality is the essence of his pretensions to rule, is the traditional American way of dealing with the rule of law adequate to that? I'm not sure that if you look at other countries and other eras, that their approaches to the rule of law were sufficient to prevent the rise of dictatorships and other very dangerous political situations. So this is not just nuclear codes. This is not just a bad phone call to Georgia. This is a mob leader who is trying to turn the United States into a kind of extension of his private mafia and sabotage democracy in the process. And it's going to take some serious backbone in the Justice Department and elsewhere to actually deal with him.
John Meacham, it's been part of my concern with the response to Donald Trump and Republicans. At times, I haven't thought Democrats were up to it. And I haven't thought they've been up to it because even 3-4 months ago, Democratic leaders across Washington, wherever I talked to them, would say they would still be shocked that Donald Trump and Trumpists were lying. They would still be shocked by their extreme measures. This disruption routine of disruption, lies, and violence, this toxic brew that Donald Trump brought into the mainstream of the Republican Party in 2015 has been there for 7 years. And I agree with Anand. You've got to respond to that. I'm not saying fight fire with fire. Don't fight threats of violence with threats of violence, but you certainly have to respond. If there is nothing but silence and there is nothing but lies, then it seems to me a press conference like the one that Merrick Garland called yesterday to defend law enforcement officers was necessary.
I think it was. I think two things. One is, this is not a question of whether, I believe, whether Merrick Garland wins or loses, right? This is not Merrick Garland versus Donald Trump. This is the United States of America in all of its imperfections, but its ultimate devotion to trying to get things right in an attempt to keep this experiment going. And I understand that there are innumerable people who think that the experiment may not be worth defending. But the question you have to ask yourself is then, what do you replace it with? The answer to the imperfections of the United States is not chaos, I believe. It has to be a thoughtful and well-intentioned and, dare I say it, good-hearted effort to try to make this thing work. Because if democracy were really easy, everybody would do it. And so this is not paintball. This is not laser tag. This is, and Lord knows it's not 1986 and Bob Dole and George Mitchell are going on Capitol Gang. This is an existential crisis for the constitutional system. The constitutional system ain't perfect. But again, the question you have to ask yourself is, if you want to do away with it, and a lot of folks on the right want to manipulate it into their own machinery of perpetual power, if you want to do away with it, you have to have an alternative. And so I just think that there's a certain sobriety that's called for in this moment.
For sure. We want to pause the conversation, take a quick break. We have Senator